The officer who escorted him in looked almost apologetic about it. That was the first thing people noticed. Not the defendant, not his clothes, not the file the bailiff was carrying, but the look on that officer's face, the look of a man doing his job and feeling something complicated about it this particular morning. The defendant's name was Walter Grimes. He was 56 years old. He walked with a cane he'd fashioned from a length of PVC pipe wrapped in electrical tape because the VA waiting list for a proper one was 7 months long, and 7 months, when you're sleeping outside in November in Providence, Rhode Island, is not a time frame that accommodates patience. He was wearing a coat that had once been green or perhaps gray and was now the color of time itself, layered and worn, and carrying the particular smell of a life lived without a roof. He had no attorney. He had no folder. He had no one in the gallery waiting for him because the people who had once waited for him were either gone or estranged, in the way families become estranged when a man comes back from war different, and nobody on either side knows what to do about different. He stood at the defendant's table and he stood straight. That was the thing about Walter Grimes. Whatever the years had taken, and they had taken considerably, they had not taken his posture. He stood like a man who had once been trained to, and had never unlearned it because some things go too deep to undo. Judge Frank Caprio watched him walk in. He watched the cane. He watched the coat. He watched the way Walter Grimes positioned himself at the microphone with the careful deliberateness of someone who understands that this moment matters and intends to meet it correctly. The judge had been on this bench for a long time. He had seen defendants perform contrition and perform defiance and perform 100 variations of both. He knew with the accumulated instinct of decades when he was watching a performance. This was not a performance. This was just a man, a very tired man, standing up straight because it was the right thing to do. Before we go any further, if the words VA waiting list just hit you the way they hit me every single time, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think we owe the people who came home carrying things we'll never fully understand. Because what Judge Caprio did for Walter Grimes in the next 40 minutes is the kind of thing that should be taught somewhere, in some class, about what it means to have power and use it correctly. Subscribe and don't go anywhere because this one is different. This one stays with you. The charge was trespassing. Walter had been found sleeping in the covered entryway of a closed hardware store on a Tuesday night in December when the temperature had dropped to 19 degrees. The officer who filed the report had noted in handwriting that suggested some discomfort with the task that the defendant had been respectful, cooperative, and non-resistant, and had apologized for the inconvenience. He had apologized for the inconvenience of nearly freezing to death in a doorway. The city's position, presented by a junior prosecutor named Fielding who kept his eyes on his notes and his voice professionally neutral, was straightforward. The ordinance was clear. The property was private. The citation had been properly issued. He requested a fine of $150 and a formal trespass warning. He said this without looking at Walter. He said it the way people say things they have decided not to think too hard about. Judge Caprio set down his pen. "Mr. Grimes," he said, in the tone he used when he had decided to understand something before he ruled on it, "tell me about yourself." Walter blinked. It was a small thing, but it was visible. The blink of a man who had not been asked that question in a very long time, and who needed a half-second to locate the answer. Then he spoke. His voice was low and careful, and had the cadence of someone choosing words the way you choose your footing on uncertain ground. He had served 2 tours. Army, 1989 to 97. He had come home the second time with a back injury and what the VA had eventually, after considerable paperwork, classified as PTSD, though Walter didn't use that term. He said, "I came back different," and left it there. He had worked for 11 years after that, mostly warehouse and logistics work, until his back made sustained physical labor impossible, and the company that had employed him for 9 of those 11 years discovered that disability accommodations were more expensive than a termination agreement. He had a daughter in Phoenix he called on her birthday when he could find a charged phone. He had a brother in Connecticut who had offered to help twice and whom Walter had declined twice because accepting felt like the wrong kind of surrender, and he understood, saying this, that it probably hadn't been, but understanding something and feeling it are two different problems. He had been living outside for 14 months. He had apologized for the inconvenience. The courtroom was quiet in the particular way it gets quiet when something true and heavy has been set down in the center of the room, and everyone is waiting to see who picks it up. That's when everything changed. Judge Caprio turned to the prosecutor. His voice was still calm. It was always calm, which was part of what made it so effective. But there was something beneath the calm now, something with edges. "Mr. Fielding," he said, "this man served this country for 8 years. He came home injured. He worked for 11 more. He is sleeping in doorways in December because the systems that were supposed to catch him did not catch him. And the city's position is a $150 fine." Fielding opened his mouth, closed it. "I'm not asking you to respond to that," the judge said quietly. "I'm asking you to hear it." He turned back to Walter. And what came next was not a ruling, not immediately. It was a conversation, the kind that courtrooms rarely host because they are built for procedure, and procedure is not always the same as care. The judge asked Walter about the VA claim, about its status, about the waiting list. Walter answered each question with the same ground-level precision he'd used throughout. No inflation, no drama, just the coordinates of a situation reported accurately. Then Judge Caprio did something that made the court reporter pause, and the bailiff look up, and the junior prosecutor finally stopped looking at his notes. He picked up his phone. He called from the bench a veterans support organization that he had worked with for years, an organization that maintained emergency transitional housing and had a direct placement program for veterans in crisis. He did not describe this as extraordinary. He did it the way people do things that are simply the right next step. He spoke briefly, confirmed availability, and set the phone down. "Case dismissed," he said. "All charges. No fine. No record notation." He looked at Walter. "There is a bed available tonight through a program I trust. My clerk will give you the information before you leave this building. There is also a veterans advocate on staff there who can accelerate your VA claim. I've worked with her personally, and she is excellent at her job." He paused. "You apologized for the inconvenience of surviving. I want you to stop doing that. You are not an inconvenience. You are a veteran of this country who has been let down by it, and the least this courtroom can do is refuse to let that continue unchallenged." Walter Grimes stood at that microphone for a moment and did not speak, because there are things that arrive after too long an absence and land too large for immediate language. He nodded once, slowly, and his jaw moved, and he looked at the judge with the eyes of a man who had stopped expecting things and had just received something anyway. Someone in the gallery started clapping. It spread the way warmth spreads, not all at once but steadily, person by person, until it filled the room. Fielding, the prosecutor, put his pen down and clapped too. Walter Grimes left that courtroom with a name, an address, and a phone number written on a piece of paper in the clerk's precise handwriting. He went to the program. He stayed. The veterans advocate, a woman named Deirdre, who was apparently, as the judge had promised, excellent at her job, had his VA claim escalated and partially approved within 6 weeks. He received a proper cane. He moved into permanent supportive housing 4 months after that, a studio apartment with a window that faced east, and he told Deirdre that the morning light was the best thing about it. He called his daughter on her birthday that year, and the year after, she flew out to see him the following spring. He is still there, still standing straight. Justice does not always arrive with a gavel and a penalty. Sometimes it arrives with a phone call from a bench and a piece of paper with an address on it, and a judge who understood that the most important thing in that room was not the ordinance, it was the man. If Walter's story hit something deep in you, if I came back different, landed somewhere it will take a while to leave, drop a comment below. Tell me what we owe the people who serve. Tell me about someone you know who came home carrying something invisible. Like this video if you believe that a courtroom should be a place where people are seen, not just processed. Subscribe, because every week there is a story about a person who didn't expect anything and received something that mattered. And share this one, because somewhere right now there's a Walter Grimes standing in a doorway in December, standing straight, apologizing for the inconvenience. He deserves better. He always did.